welcoming to Talking Heads of Noosa, Mr. Phil Jarratt, one of three minds behind the festival. Tell us about those early days when you first came up with the idea of the Noosa Festival of Surfing 30 years ago.
Is it that long?
Afraid so, Phil. Afraid so.
Half a lifetime ago. Good to see you looking so well, Tommy. And the old firm is back in action. We had lots of good years with the festival.
We really did.
And yeah, it's great to see you still involved. And to answer your question, John Brazen, who was then a partner in my publishing company, and a house painter named Johnny Lee, who was a very good surfer and very good longboarder, and had a young brat called Jai, who was about 5 or 6 years old at the time and was showing great promise as well. We got together and hatched this plot over quite a few beers. It was long before Heads of Noosa, so I can't say we were drinking sponsored product, but we were drinking something. And we came up with this idea to basically steal a concept from the French. And I'd been going to France for quite a few years, for a couple of months every northern summer. And I'd been to the Jarratt festival and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really liked the way that they put a cultural slant on what was otherwise basically a longboard competition, an international longboard competition. And they brought a lot of Hawaiians to Jarratt for that event, which usually went about a week long. And John Brazen, JB, editor publisher of Pacific Longboarder now, had also been to the festival on a couple of occasions, and so we both really liked the idea. Johnny Lee hadn't been to France, and he didn't know anything about it, but he took our word for it. I showed him some footage. I showed him, Joel Tudor at the Jarratt festival and so on, and all the old Hawaiians, and Greg Knoll and the big wave contingent. Everybody used to go there. All invited, FOC, getting a week of beautiful French living and occasionally a few little waves at La Côte de Basque. And anyway, we all loved it. The big thing was that we had to sell it to the Noosa Malibu Club, who had an event called the Noosa Longboard Classic, which began in 1992, so that hence the 30 years being celebrated. And I'm talking about, this is late 1997, and we put a proposal to the club, of which I was a member, and Johnny was a key member because he'd been running the pro event, which had been introduced a couple of years before. We put the idea to them that we would collaborate, and we would do the festival side of things. My company would do the festival, and the club would continue to run the event, and John Lee would continue to run the pro event. And eventually, after a few false starts, we convinced the membership of the Noosa Malibu Club that it wasn't such a bad idea. The first one was 98 was quite a small affair, but we got a lot of great media. And the following year, 99, we got some sponsors in that really, they'd been in the first year just to give it a try. The second year, they threw cannons at it. It was fantastic. We had every surf star known to man materialise in Noosa for that week. And you know what? We didn't get one single wave on the points that week. So the tents on the beach at First Point, the whole setup for a great contest, and also the sponsors, key people, all staying at Natanya Noosa, looking right at the event. Never saw a wave ridden in anger out there the whole week. We spent the week at Castaways, and all these years later, a lot of people tell me that they remember that as the best one ever, even though we were parked on the beachfront at Castaways and the wind got up a bit on shore. There was a good little bank out there, and we got through the lack of surf. And so after that, over the many years of my involvement, I never really worried too much about the surf component. If you get everything else right, there'll be a wave somewhere. And it's pretty much the way it's been, but we've had some years when it's been absolutely classic, as you know.
Yeah. I think that's one of the beauties of it. You mentioned culture before, the culture that you, in your words, stole from the French, but were inspired by. Culture and community are not only integral, but they're fundamental to the Noosa Festival of Surfing, and always have been. How do you think that adds to the event and creates the the ambiance, I guess, of the festival and draws people back time and time again?
Well, I think it was really important to recognise that surfers were getting older. You know, the demographic was increasing, particularly with the popularity of longboarding. And in the mid to late 90s, that had really kicked in. You know, guys and gals, you know, families were all surfing longer. You know, when I started surfing in the early 60s, the assumption was that when you got a job, or even worse, when you got married and had kids, you just put your toys away and you act responsibly. Fortunately, my generation pioneered the idea that this wasn't necessarily the case. And so many of us just kept surfing and refused to stop. You know, no matter how bad we get, we just keep going. And part of that was the fraternity of surfers and the culture that underlay that. And I think watching those events in France over several years really gave me a clear idea of what appealed to people from all over the world. And if we could bring that same element to Noosa. And it's not just a matter of getting some old surfboards out and having a real estate auctioneer come in and, as we did, and try and flog them, and have people like Wayne Lynch stand up and say, that board when I made it and the now, I wouldn't pay $10 for it. Things like that. That merely added lustre to the cluster, if you like. And over the years, we became known not only for the low-hanging fruit, which is memorabilia and surfboard auctions and surfer stomp sort of dances and getting resurrecting old surf bands like the Atlantics and Hamam Shud and so on. It wasn't just that. That was the low-hanging fruit. But we really kind of worked hard every year to come up with a different idea that translated to the masses where surfing came from, where it was going, what kind of people the leading surfers were. And we got more and more people coming from different surfing areas. One year we had a huge contingent of Tahitians. And at that point I'd never been to Tahiti, and I was amazed until they decided they were going to set up a market on the walkway at First Point, which wasn't exactly in our council permit. But it was really hard to tell them because they had all these colourful fabrics and everything. They were just such wonderful people. It was always a surprise like that from the new surfing. Well, Tahiti, Polynesia, of course, is not a new surfing country, but every year there seemed to be a contingent of surfers from somewhere new. It was Tahiti that year. A few years later, we started to get Koreans, the Philippines, all over Southeast Asia. People started coming, and also through the Pacific Islands. And we had a almost global sort of representation. Europe, of course, was strong, and California and Hawaii, of course, always one of the mainstays of the event.
Yeah, I think close to 30 nations or regions was our largest representation one year, which is absolutely staggering.
Yeah, well, we probably won't get there this year, but we do have Mason Schremer, and we've got a few other ring-ins.
Yeah. Now, it's been a huge span for you from those very early days, Breaker Milk coming on board and chucking money at you, and then slowly progressing through. There's been ups and downs and all sorts of things, and you've left an incredible legacy behind you.
I'm not dead yet.
Just for the festival, not obviously your writing career as well. But what are some of your most memorable moments from the festival?
Well, I think the year, I think it was probably '99. The year that we had the Keelana family, we'd had Rusty Keelana, who was at that stage just a recently dethroned longboard world champion, and a great guy, a bit of a rascal, but a great guy and a great surfer, great trick surfer from Makaha. Anyway, he went back after the first festival in '98, the first festival attached to the Classic. He went back and he told Mum and Dad and the whole Makaha crew what a great time he'd had. And so I get a phone call from Buffalo, who I'd had some dealings with in the past, and Buffalo wants me to fly out his family. And fortunately, I wasn't going to give Breaker Milk a free ride, but you mentioned him already. Fortunately, Breaker Milk had shucked a bunch of money at us, so I was able to fly the Keelanas. Brian Keelana came out with his dad. Rusty came out with his wife, his then wife, And we had a whole tribe with them, and also at their own cost, of course, Buffalo's buddies came out. We put them into the South Pacific Resort. They just loved it. They loved the Hawaiiana on the walls and being able to hang at the pool when they weren't at the beach. The owner of South Pacific, Jim Tatton, put on a little courtesy bus only for the Hawaiians. If you weren't Hawaiian, no courtesy here, Bob. Which didn't go down well with some of the other special guests, but they just had such a ball. Anyway, that was all pre-event. On the eve of the opening ceremony, Hauokapu, traditional Hawaiian opening ceremony, but which Buffalo was going to run, he rang me. Actually, his banker, his buddy, who was sharing, Leland Dow, who was I think it was Leland Dow, who was sharing. No, I got the wrong name. Anyway, cut. His banker buddy, who was sharing a room with him, rang me in the morning. We're going to have the Hauokapu at 5 o'clock, sunset hour, and he says that Buffalo can't do this because he represents the Hawaiian surfing culture. He can't do it unless you also have a representative of the Australian Indigenous surfing culture. Wow. And I only knew two, and they lived in Fingal. So we had a bit of a problem. And it was one that couldn't be easily addressed because our Indigenous people, our First Nations of this area, had long since been removed by history in a totally unfortunate part of history, and now they're coming back, and we're very glad of it. But we didn't have a kabi surfer that we could go to, so therefore I had to negotiate my way out of this problem, and I couldn't think of anything. And then eventually I thought of Bill Wallace, who is very much a white man, but in a way was our tribal elder, being a great surfboard manufacturer, designer over many years, and also a great surfer back in the day. And I mentioned it to Bill that I might need his help that afternoon. And he said, anything you want, Phil. And I said, well, I want you to be the tribal elder. Oh, I can do that. Then I had to break the news to Buffalo. And he said, well, I've got to meet this guy. So I had to arrange a meeting for Buffalo with Buffalo Bill. But when Buffalo and Bill got together and had a couple of beers by the pool, they fell in love with each other. It was a bromance from the start. And that evening, it was quite moving actually to see this old man, this great old Hawaiian surfer, and this great old Australian surfboard manufacturer walk down to the beach holding the bowl and perform the ceremony. And it wasn't Indigenous, but in a way I felt it kind of was. It was representative of our surfing tribe. And since then, we've made sure every year that we do have Indigenous representation, and the festival's been so much better for it.
Yeah, the kabi have always been integral to our opening ceremony, which is fantastic to recognise the First Nations.
So for me, that was it was a problem, but it ended up becoming a real highlight. Yeah. And there have been many of them. Yeah. I mean, having the Vans duct tape event a couple of times, having Vans bring in the whole tribe, led by, of course, Joel Shooter, and running their very different and at the time really edgy event. It was kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters come to town, all these trick surfers and everything. It was just wonderful. Yeah. There have been many highlights. We introduced originally an event called the Champion of Champions, which was for world champions to surf on both longboard and shortboard, regardless of what their discipline had been when they won the world champion. That was very popular for a few years, and then we expanded it into a four-way challenge, an all-board challenge in which you had to ride a shortboard, a longboard, and a layer, and you had to body surf. And that introduced a whole new world of watermen to the event. And I regard that as a really innovative and wonderful idea that gave new life to the festival, because you never want it to get boring. And I think what the Noosa Malibu Club and World Safaris are doing with it right now is symptomatic of that, not letting it get boring, bringing in new things. And I really salute the fact that we've got a twin fin with retro twins, the long twins becoming such a big design element. This is a great time to salute the twin fin. Hopefully we can get Mark Richards up here, but I think he's a little bit shy of the COVID situation, and we'll see what May's looking like.
Speaking of good ideas that have come out of the festival, of course, the Noosa World Surf Reserve happened, towards the end of your tenure with the festival, but grew out of it. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, because although I've been involved in the surfing media and various elements of the surf industry for decades, for many decades, the Noosa Festival kept me in touch with people who are actually doing things in surf zones around the world, and people who are proactive in those surf zones, in environmental groups and various clubs that were various surfboard riding clubs, both short and long, because we went way beyond the remit of getting longboarders to come to Noosa. That was a no-brainer. We were getting body surfers en masse. For a while there we were getting SUPs, but we got rid of them. Sorry, no offence to the SUP community. They were also a very important part of it. We've had dogs, as you know. It was important to bring in new subsets of the tribal group, and this was a great opportunity to do that. And I guess through organising those events beyond just longboarding, I got to meet and become friendly with a lot of people who were involved, as I said, in the ecological welfare of surf breaks, and that evolved into an association with the Save the Waves Coalition. Through them, when they took over the running of the World Surf Reserve's family of dedicated reserves, I suddenly realised that we should be one, and we had to go through the process of becoming a national surfing reserve first, which we started in 2013, and were dedicated as a national surfing reserve in 2015. And then we immediately started the campaign to become recognised as a World Surfing Reserve, which we achieved. We were granted that name in 2017, late 2017, and as you know, at the festival last year in February 2020, just before the dreaded COVID hit, we had the whole team from Save the Waves Coalition and World Surfing Reserves from Santa Cruz, California, and representatives of most of the other World Surfing Reserves from all over here in Noosa for our dedication as the 10th World Surfing Reserve.
Yeah, it's incredible work, and I think the entire Noosa community, I think the surfing community of the world actually should be thankful to you for preserving the incredible ecosystem we have here and these phenomenal breaks.
Well, it wasn't just me. It was we have a committee of about 12 or 13 people, and half of those people have been with me since we started in 2013, and that's a long time to be on a committee. And a lot of people said, well, now that you are a World Surfing Reserve, you can pack your bags and your work's done here. No, work is just starting really, because it's a job of stewardship, which goes way beyond worrying about somebody building a high-rise in the Noosa National Park. Ain't going to happen. Previous generations have seen to it that we've got a pristine environment. We've normally got pristine surf breaks, unless something crazy happens like shift of sand, which we're seeing at the moment at First Point. Hopefully this coming swell will fix that, but sidebar. There's so much work to be done. At the moment, one of our campaigns is about behavioural patterns. We've introduced or reintroduced a refined surf code, which we're on video we're taking into schools later this year. We're going to be part of the Australian curriculum and take that message about safety, but also about how to behave in the water. How the only way we're all going to be able to surf in crowded surf zones is if we understand the basic rules of engagement, and that means sharing.
Yep.
That's at the baseline. It's about sharing waves, yep. And that's a message. If you get Groms as they're just starting to understand that and carry that through, like old guys like me, we're never going to learn. We're going to be yelling at people until we die, but hopefully less. We want to get across the generations to understand that this is the way forward. It's a bit like the electric car. It's coming. If you don't like it, then too bad. It is coming, and it's a bit like when you go skiing or snowboarding. you can't park your car at the mountain. You know, you've got to find another way to get there, and these are offered. We're going to arrive at that point here and on the Gold Coast and Byron Bay and many other brilliant surfing locations in Australia, and we're trying to actually get people to understand that things can't be as they were in the past. We have to work out an adaptability within the surfing culture, and that's part of it. And the other part of it is that we have an aging surf demographic, and we also have, in the last month or so we've had 2 people saved by defibrillators in the surf, people who died in the surf, and I know both of them. And I'm 69 3/4, and I'm out there surfing every day, so it could be me next. Let's hope
Hopefully not.
And defibrillators are really, really important, not just for the surfing community, but for older people walking through the national park, for example. And as I speak, which is a bit of about a month or so out from the festival, we're about to put in the first of our World Surfing Reserve defibrillators in the national park at the kiosk there at Nasho's, at the Nasho Surf Break, and we expect more to go in there in the future. And ultimately, we think that we'll be able to put, by the end of this year, we'll be able to put about 6 new defibrillators spaced out on the beach, so that nobody is going to, so that everybody's got a fair chance of getting revived while at the beach.
It's incredible work, Phil. Now, we've covered lots of things that are absolutely integral to surfing, but we missed one very important one, and it's sitting right next to you. Of course, there's nothing quite like a cold beer for those parched surfers after a good session. So with Heads of Noosa Brewery joining the Noosa Festival of Surfing this year, what do you think the relationship is with surf and beer, but also with local businesses and the Noosa Festival of Surfing?
Well, if I can answer the beer question first, I think as you clearly point out, surfing and beer, are integral parts of the same machine. Without beer, there is no surf. Well, that's not quite true, but without surf, there is no beer. I won't have a beer until I've had a surf on any day. And if I don't surf, I'll just go straight to wine. But that is a different argument. I love the idea that we've got this fantastic brewery in our midst, and they're so surf supportive. Heads of Noosa are doing a fantastic job, and to me, there's a natural simpatico there with the surf culture. The guys are out of surf. It's really good, and they've got fantastic premises for functions. So I think it's an excellent move on both parts, and hopefully it will continue quite a few years. Yep. We've had some great sponsors in the past, and I think this is going to be one of the great sponsorship partnerships of the future, of the present and future. But to answer the second part of your question, the other businesses around town, I think it's wonderful to see the community start to get involved, because for a long time there was a feeling that a surf comp brings nothing to the town. They all sleep in their cars. And they buy their beers at Dan Murphy or somewhere else. Yeah. Dan Murphy wasn't around at the time. They go to the bottle shop, they drink their beers in their car, and then they fall asleep. And they don't spend any money in the town. And then it was pointed out to them that Netanya Noosa was actually full of surfers, including some surf industry tycoons who come every year to the festival, and that they were spending heaps, and that maybe they should actually analyse their patronage during the week or so of the surf festival, and they did, and that sort of spread around Hastings Street, belatedly I might add, but the Hastings Street glitterati eventually got the message that this in fact was a serious socio-economic benefit to the town, and I think having Noosa recognised now as a World Surfing Reserve has made them think that even more. And I expect that the festival, as long as it can continue, and I hope it's forever, we'll get great support from all kinds of businesses, probably businesses that haven't even been invented yet.
Obviously, you're very familiar with all of the breaks of Noosa as well, and I think you could almost claim the title of being a true Noosa local.
30 years.
Not entirely, but it's certainly pretty close. Of all of the breaks, which one is your favourite? And if you had the opportunity to surf that break with 2 other surfers, past, present, or future, who would they be?
Wow. I'm torn between Tea Tree and First Point. I love Tea Tree. It's a long walk. It's getting longer every year. First Point, when it's happening, is just such a wonderful place. There's a lot of camaraderie there, as well as a near perfect longboarding wave. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that for 18 months. Hopefully, it'll come back very soon. The sand volume there, the build-up has been immense over during 2019, and we still haven't budged it. Hopefully, that'll all change. But assuming that First Point was at its cylindrical best through that middle to inside section, I would love to surf First Point. Who with? Well, Johnny Lee and JB would be my choices. Both excellent surfers, both my vintage, and we like to drop in on each other a bit. No, we don't. That would be my old guy nostalgic choice. Of the here and now, 2 of my favourite surfers, 2 of my favourite longboarders to watch in the world are Harry Roach, who I've watched grow up and completely admire his approach to surfing and his approach to life. I'd like to surf with Harry, and I'd like to surf with Mason Schremer, who is she's just such an adornment. She's a fairly recent resident, but she's been coming to the festival since she was a little tiny kid with Mum and usually Dad, and the sisters. Yeah. And she loves Noosa with a passion, and she surfs all the points beautifully. So I'd like to surf with them.
Yep. Fantastic. Phil, Jarratt, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tommy.